What's going on, ladies, gents, and kids of all ages? It is Eric coming back at you once again from the Nerd Cave, and today we have something a little bit different planned for you. Instead of a deck breakdown, we're going to be talking about the 17 best cards in Disney Lorcana right now. If you're looking to buy in a Lorcana, you're a new player, these are the cards that I would buy first. Many of these cards have stayed super relevant across metas. The cards that are newer, obviously that's not the case. For the cards that have been around for a while, they have been relevant across multiple sets and across multiple decks in those sets. So we're going to be focusing primarily on the 17 best cards in no particular order for the last 5 sets. Before we jump into that, as always, big shout out to the Patreons who make the giveaways on the channel possible. We're only a couple hundred subscribers away from hitting that 2,000 subscriber giveaway, so if you want to push that along, definitely click that subscribe button if you're enjoying the videos. Tell your friends. We always love new members in the community. If there's a card that you hear me mention over the course of this video that you think isn't one of the top 17 contenders, or another card that you think should replace it, I would love to hear it in the comments below. Love to hear your suggestions. I would like to, if it works out, potentially do another video in the future of the top 17 cards as voted on by you guys. So if I could get a list together for voting, that would be perfect, and then we can have a little vote and see what you guys think are the top 17 cards. Are they different than what I have picked, or are they largely going to be the same? Disney Lorcana has over 1,000 cards currently, so let's hear my picks for the top 17 cards out of all those cards. The first card we're going to talk about, you've heard me talk about her time and time again, is going to be Madam Mim Fox, a 4/3/4/3 inkable character, questing only for 1, but her quest is not what makes her great. The fact that she can even quest is a miracle. I'm surprised that they didn't give this character Reckless. But when you play this character, banish her or return another character to your hand. Great for that bounce ability. Ends up being good in Ruby Amethyst, in really anything Amethyst Steel. It's good in Blurple, it's good in aggro, be that Amethyst Emerald or Amethyst Amber. So really all the color combinations are gonna see you playing Madam Mim Fox. She's been a staple since she came out, and she will continue to be a staple in my opinion, as evidenced by the foil price currently. If you guys haven't seen that, we'll throw that on screen. Pretty crazy that a rare card is that high of a price for a foil. I think she's more expensive than foil Be Prepared, at least as of the recording of this video, which I would say is potentially a bigger staple, but 4/3 questing for 1, huge meta staple. These are a card I definitely recommend getting while the getting's good, before they are a little more scarce, while the reprints are still happening. She just crushes almost everything in the meta. Anything with 4 defense or less is just going to fall to a Mim Fox. Next up, this one may be a little more divisive. We have Piglet, Pooh Pirate Captain, a 2-cost inkable 2/2 character. Well, you have 2 or more other characters in play. This character gets +2 lore, but otherwise he's questing for 1. That's fantastic on curve. You get that turn 1 character, then Piglet turn 2, and then your turn 3 character, and all of a sudden your Piglet is questing for 3 as of that time. So I do think Piglet is fantastic. He's become a real meta staple. He was less of a meta staple in previous metas, but he was still seeing play in certain decks, particularly in aggro. In this set, however, I've seen him seeing play in our primary 2 Amber decks, which are Steel Song and Hyper Aggro, which I think has made his price go up a little bit. And he's even seeing play in some Mufasa deck lists, which is really the only other Amber contender, which I think makes him definitely one of the top 17 cards right now, not only based on the fact that he's seeing play in those decks, but the quantity of copies that he's seeing play. Many are playing 3 or 4 Piglets. Next up, jumping over to a steel card, we do have a new addition from set 5. We have Pete, Games Referee, a 3/3/3 inkable character who quests for 1, but again, it's his ability that makes him fantastic. When you play this character, opponents can't play actions until the start of your next turn. Solid stat line that's going to let him trade into foxes and snakes, trade into Smeeze, and a lot of that other stuff. He's going to kill an aerial without dying, so he's really good, and he's going to shut off actions, which is going to potentially allow him a turn on the board to be able to sing if you want him to sing, or to be able to get a quest in or attack, whatever is the most relevant for him. Really the only thing that kills him in real time is something that's going to be able to exert him to take him out, or potentially something like Madame Medusa, or I guess Smash, but Smash isn't really as relevant in the meta. He is seeing play in Sapphire Steel as well as Amber Steel at a quantity of 4 in both decks. I have seen some deck lists that are Emerald Steel that are also running Pete, so I think Pete is definitely a meta staple right now. Will he remain a staple in the long term? Power creep is what's going to decide that, but I think he's going to continue to be good because actions aren't going anywhere. Then next up, jumping back over to Amber, we have Rapunzel, Rapunzel, gifted with healing. She saw a little bit of a dip during the last set. She wasn't as prevalent with Brawl being really heavy in the meta. She was dying to Brawl, so she saw a little bit of dip in price, but she's gone back up quite significantly. I think she's actually at the highest price she ever has been. During every other set prior to last set, she was always a staple, was seeing a lot of play during set 4, a little bit less, but still being played. But she's a 4-cost inkable 1/5 character questing for 2, and when you play this character, remove up to 3 damage from one of your characters, draw a card for each damage removed this way. So crazy ability on a 4-drop. You're potentially drawing 3 cards and healing 3 damage, and she's questing for 2 with 5 defense. Absolutely ridiculous stat line. She is seeing play in the most relevant Amber deck right now, which is Steel Song. She is seeing play in Mufasa, not so much in aggro because they don't really have the targets for the healing. So she's only in 2 of those 3 decks, but I still think she's definitely, based on her performance across multiple metas, a top 17 card in Disney Lorcana right now. Then I'm sure everybody saw this one coming, but we do have Be Prepared, a 7-cost uninkable action song. You can sing it with a character with cost 7 or greater and banish all characters. This is the Wrath of God of Disney Lorcana. If you're familiar with Magic, Wrath of God destroys all characters. So same thing, but it says destroy instead of banish. Like Be Prepared. Be Prepared has been a staple since set 1. Pretty much in any Ruby deck, you're gonna see 1 or 2 copies of this. In many Ruby decks, you're going to see 3 or 4. Sapphire Ruby is running generally 4. Ruby Amethyst is generally running 4 right now. And those are the 2 big Ruby combinations that we're going to be seeing. Not really seeing people play Ruby Emerald or Ruby Steel. We are seeing some instances of Ruby Amber, like I mentioned earlier, with those Mufasa decks, which is primarily where you're going to be seeing that color combination. Sometimes they are playing Be Prepared in that deck list, at least a couple copies, even though Mufasa dictates that you shouldn't play a lot of non-characters. Be Prepared is still worth it. That should speak to its relevance, and definitely a big meta contender right now. Jumping back over to Steel, we have Mr. Smee Bumbling Mate, a 2-cost 3/3 character questing for 2. At the end of your turn, you put 1 damage on him unless you have a captain in play if he is exerted. So he is going to kind of whittle himself down after a couple turns. Primarily where you're going to see him getting played right now is going to be in that Amber Steel Song deck. Curve's great with Rapunzel to be able to at least heal for 2, draw 2 cards. So definitely great there. He is still seeing play in Sapphire Steel in many instances, and also in some instances in Emerald Steel. Some instances not so much, but he was so good in the last 2 metas that I think he is just going to continue to be a major contender. That 3/3 stat line on a 2-cost character continues to be a real tipping point for a character's worth, and inkability is a majorly relevant factor also. This next card is another one I'm not sure what they were thinking with the ability and stat line, but we have Cesu Emboldened Warrior, a 3-cost inkable character, 1/4 stat line questing for 2, but what makes that 1/4 stat line extra broken is this character gets +1 for each card in your opponent's hand. If you ever played Disney Lorcana, particularly at a competitive level, you know drawing is a major factor in swinging the game. People are trying to draw a ton of cards all the time to hedge their bets and have the tools that they need. Particularly with this game, unlike Magic, you don't have a maximum hand size. You can have 12 cards in your hand, and that is fine. People are going to be drawing a lot. They may start drawing less when you get Emboldened Warrior on the board. She saw a combo with Flynn that was absolutely broken during the last set. Now with more people playing Steel Song, Flynn has become less good in my opinion. We're seeing more Ruby Amethyst decks cut the Flynn Cesu combo, or at least cut the Flynn and only play the Cesu, which to me just speaks to how good she is. She's still fantastic in that deck. We're seeing Ruby Sapphire playing the big Cesu, which has led to this as a potential shift target, so you're seeing some Ruby Sapphire decks running this. You're also seeing this in Ruby Amethyst, and also in some of those Mufasa deck lists. I think she can be really good. Definitely one of the top 17 cards right now. Will it be long term? That one's a little harder to say. And then next up, back over to Amber, we have another song, and that is going to be the Bare Necessities, a 2-cost inkable action song. A character with cost 2 or greater can sing this song for free. An opponent reveals their hand and discards a non-character card of your choice. So that is any non-character card. Could be a location, could be an item, could be something they really need. Great way to snipe those fishbone quills, queen's castles, all that kind of stuff. Any non-character card you're able to just straight up take away from them. The fact that it can be sung by a character on 3, so you could go like turn 2 Ursula, see their hand, see if you want to even take a non-character card again after sniping a song with Ursula, and then going into turn 3 you can use Ursula to sing this in those Amber Emerald decks. So I think that combination is absolutely gross. It's also seeing definite play in Steel Song where it is very good, and even in some Mufasa lists, I've seen this as a tech option. Then next up, jumping back to Steel for a couple cards, we do have everybody's favorite Wheel of Fortune from Magic, Whole New World, 5-cost uninkable action song. So a character with cost 5 or greater can sing it for free, and each player discards their hand and draws 7 cards. So it is going to be a Wheel of Fortune essentially. Being able to do this when your opponent has a lot more cards in their hand than you can be absolutely game breaking. Having to do it when you're both without a lot of cards in your hand can be absolutely game losing for you. So it can kind of go either way. It is a bit of a double-edged sword, but it's still seeing a ton of play. It's seen play in Emerald Steel, it's seen play in Amber Steel, it's seen play in Amethyst Steel, Jafar Wheel, so it's seeing play in a lot of definite major meta decks. And the great thing about Whole New World is it's almost always a 3 or 4 copies. Also Sapphire Steel is one that I didn't mention, seeing play there, where you're fishboning out your hand and then Whole New Worlding before your opponent can take advantage of their hand as readily. So Whole New World across Steel decks is something that has been incredibly relevant. It is also potentially very good in Ruby Steel, where you kind of suffer from not being able to draw enough cards. So Whole New World, I think, is an absolute meta staple. Top 17 cards, probably will be in the long term. Like if we're talking about like a Power 9 like Magic, I think Whole New World would be on that list. Then next up in the 5-cost slot, still in Steel, we have Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood, a 5-cost inkable 3/6 character, shifting for 3. So pretty crazy that a stat line like this is coming down on turn 3 potentially, with a 3/6 body, question for 2, which is gross, and during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you're going to be able to go ahead and gain 2 lore. He's going to be gaining lore as if he's questing when you're challenging in, which is fantastic. And when this character is banished in a challenge, you may draw a card, so he is also going to be able to replace himself. He has been seeing play in Amber Steel pretty significantly. It's one of their only 1-drops in a lot of instances. They have like Cinderella and Robin Hood, and that's it. So that's what you're generally looking to tech against. He did see a little bit of play in Sapphire Steel in some lists, less so in this meta. He's still fantastic in Emerald Steel and can potentially be playing in Amethyst Steel, but because most of those decks are going for the Jafar line, they are not as often on Robin Hood. But Robin Hood has been fantastic across multiple meta. It's been great since it came out. Price is down a little bit now, but I think it could definitely go back up at a moment's notice as the meta shifts. And next up in the 5-cost slot, jumping back over Ruby, we do have probably, if I had to say a card is the best character in Lorcana, this is probably the one that I would pick. Even though he can't quest at all, he is just that much of a menace to the board. He can come out and stay out for multiple turns, generally get multiple trades in, or at least take some removal out of their hand after he has already killed a character. But he's a 5-cost inkable 6/5 stat line, which is crazy. This is my argument for why they perhaps should have given Mim Fox Reckless, is he does have Rush and Reckless, and so your opponent is potentially able to kind of control the way that he attacks after that first attack. He's still controlling what their board's doing, even though he has Reckless, which is crazy. He's been a staple in Ruby Amethyst and Ruby Sapphire, both definitely decks that are running 4 of this character, and Ruby Amber also with Mufasa, generally running 4 Mauis. So the fact that you're seeing that quantity of Mauis in every relevant Ruby deck tells me he is easily one of the top 17 cards in Lorcana right now. Then next up, this is another one I think may be a little bit divisive for the Sapphire haters, but I went with Lucky Dime. Some people may say Fishbone Quill or Popsicle is the better item to choose. I think Lucky Dime is one of the best items in the game. It's seeing play in pretty much every Sapphire deck, even decks that aren't playing Hyrum, which is why I made the argument to not choose Fishbone Quill or Popsicle. Some decks are actually steering away from that combination. We're seeing more Sapphire Steel decks now that are taking advantage of things like Tipo and Mickey Mouse, and we're seeing some Sapphire Emerald decks now, which is a really interesting color combination, that are not looking to play a lot of items, but they are still running Lucky Dime on the high end. The fact that you can gain lore from a character that just came into play makes it actually kind of game breaking, especially if your opponent can't remove it. It is a 7-cost uninkable item, and it's still that good. Speaks volumes how good it is. To ink and exert it, choose a character of yours and gain lore equal to their lore. With something like Belle or Tamatoa, which could potentially have 5 lore, or with Tamatoa even more sometimes, you're getting a massive lore swing. Even with those 4 lore characters, Lucky Dime can create a huge lore swing, especially if you're on the turn where they're questing, and then you're getting Lucky Dime out, potentially getting 8 lore where your opponent's thinking you're only going to get 4, 4 or 10 maybe with a Tamatoa. You get a couple lucky dimes out. It's just absolutely gross. It's been fantastic since it came out. When it first dropped, it was like a few dollar card. Nobody really saw the potential, and then people started playing with it more. People saw the potential very quickly. It's up in price now, but since set 3, it has been a staple in pretty much every Sapphire deck in the meta, so I think Lucky Dime is one of those top 17 cards. Next up, another card that's been a staple since it dropped during set 2 is Hyrum Flaversham Toymaker, a 4-cost inkable character poised to only get better as an inventor with that cool new Inventor card coming out. If you guys haven't seen that, definitely check it out. It's a big hero 6 card. He is a 1/6 stat line for that 4 ink, which is fantastic. Dies to Maui, but he lives through a lot of other attacks from characters, and when you play this character and whenever he quests, you may banish one of your items to draw 2 cards. Fantastic with an item focused deck, especially with Tamatoa on the top end, being able to recur those items later in the game. Even when he first came out and people were playing him with something like Nick Wild, just recurring your popsicles, he was still really good then. I think Hyrum's going to continue to be a meta defining character as long as item decks continue to be relevant and there's not more item hate. I think Sapphire is going to continue to be really good, and all those Sapphire decks are going to continue to run Hyrum. Sapphire Steel, in some instances, like I mentioned, has moved away from Hyrum, but they're just drawing cards with other things. They're generally more focused on a lower curve and not playing out into the late game, but Hyrum is definitely a major factor in those Sapphire decks. Next up, jumping back over to Emerald, we do have Ursula Deceiver, a 2-cost inkable 1/3 stat line, which isn't too crazy, questing for 1, but when you play this character, chosen opponent reveals their hand and discards a song card of your choice. Songs are incredibly relevant to Lorcana. If you ever played the game, that's definitely something you know already. You're usually going to be able to get value out of her, taking away something like Be Prepared or Along Came Zeus, Let the Storm Rage On. Any of those cards can be incredibly damaging to the play lines of those decks. When you're playing that Emerald Amber deck, which has also taken on Ursula, like I mentioned, you can combine her with Bare Necessities to get a double snipe out of your opponent. In Amethyst Emerald, she is going to be fantastic because you're going to be able to use the bounce package of Snake and Fox to take advantage of getting her back into your hand and then playing her back down onto the field to snipe an additional song where it is relevant. She is seeing play in pretty much everything running Emerald right now, generally at a 3 or 4 of, so I think that definitely makes her a major meta staple. Even since set 3, she has been a huge disruptor and seeing generally a play line of 4 of in most decks that she's in. The shift line with the big Ursula that was added in set 4 just made her that much better. And then jumping back over to Amethyst, we do have Friends on the other side, probably one of the best songs in the game in my opinion. It's played in pretty much every Amethyst deck at a quantity of 4. It is a 3-cost inkable action song, and you're just going to be able to draw 2 cards, but the fact that you can exert a character to do that for free is pretty crazy. Is definitely going to sway a game in your favor, as you are going to get card advantage over your opponent pretty quickly when you're able to get a lot of Friends on the other side sung. So I do still think this card is pretty meta defining. Since set 1, it has been a major staple and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. I'd say this is definitely up there as the top maybe 10 cards of Disney Lorcana, if not the top 17. Then one more Emerald card, we do have Diablo Devoted Herald, a 3-cost uninkable character, 2/2 stat line. We probably would have had Bucky here instead of Diablo, but Bucky got nerfed into oblivion. RIP Bucky. Diablo is going to shift by discarding an action card, which isn't always going to be relevant to your play line, but he is an evasive character, and when he's exerted during your opponent's turn when they draw a card, you are also going to draw a card, which is just absolutely crazy. It helps swing a game into your favor. The evasiveness makes him particularly difficult to deal with. Still a major menace for Emerald. His price has gone down a little bit, so maybe he is less meta defining this set, but last set he was absolutely stomping the meta, and I still think in a lot of those Emerald decks he is seeing some play, so I think Diablo is still worth sticking around with at least the top 17 cards. Then the last card I talked about, like I mentioned, this is in no particular order, is going to be the Queen's Castle, the most broken location in the game and the only location that we're going to talk about today. It is a 4-cost inkable location with a 1/7 stat line, so it's going to be just out of reach of those Mauis. It is going to get you 2 passive lore every turn, which is a crazy amount of passive lore. If anybody's ever had this on the board or had 2 of these on the board, you know it's ending a game very quickly if they can't deal with it. And even more game ending at the start of your turn, if you have characters moved into this location, you're going to be drawing a card for every character that's here. So if you get a couple characters in there, draw 3 cards. It's absolutely gross. This was one of the first locations coming with the introduction of locations in set 3, and immediately showed everybody just how good locations could be. It has been a staple in pretty much everything Amethyst ever since it is just absolutely game defining. It is particularly good in Sapphire, which is a major meta staple, so I think a lot of people have teched into the Queen's Castle when they're playing those Amethyst decks. But that is the top 17 cards of Disney Lorcana right now. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below if I picked the right 17, or if there are cards that you think are going to be better. If you didn't see in the last video, NerdCave.shop is now live. We have some shirts over there that you can grab if you guys are interested in shirts. We have a limited edition black and white Team Mim and Team Merlin shirts, and then we do also have our 90s color scheme Team Merlin, Team Mim shirts, as well as the Rabbit Recycler shirts and hoodies and mug. So tons of new stuff going on over there. We also have the modern logo version of this. This is the classic logo. These have since been discontinued, so get them before they're gone. Definitely check them out. If you've thought about supporting the channel but aren't somebody who's interested in Patreon, checking out the website, making a purchase is a great way to do that. Dropping your love in the comments below is a great way to do that, and slapping that subscribe button is going to be a great way not only to do that, but to get us to that next giveaway even faster. But thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end. Your support means an absolute ton to me, and when you see those top 17 Disney cards off in the distance, remember, it is not a mirage. You guys have a great day.